it on the beat. This is Mixlock Production. It's Mix It on the beat. This is Mixlock Production. mix it on the beat. This is Mix-a-Lot Production. It's mixed on the beat. This is Mix-a-Lot Production. It's mixed on the beat. This is Mix-a-Lot Production. It's mixed on the beat. This is Mix-a-Lot Production.
Shalom. Welcome back to another edition of Current Events, aka Hebrew News. I'm Shamar Yah, and reading for me is going to be
Aman Allah.
Aman, my brother. Go ahead and switch us over to the PowerPoint. You know how this goes. We're going to go through some of the current events, some of the recent events, things that have been important in the nation of Israel as well as in the nation of our captivity, things to be aware of, so on and so forth. I realized. Oof.
PC. We want to get we want to get the feed. There we go.
There it is. All praises. So I'm past angry. Police shooting victims' families, civil rights leaders condemned failed police reform talks. Bridget Floyd says she could barely find the words to describe her disappointment in lawmakers for failing to pass sweeping police reform legislation that bears her brother George Floyd's name. I'm past upset. I'm past angry, she told CNN this week. The Floyd family, she said, waited more than a year for lawmakers to enact a law they hoped would curb police brutality against black and brown people. They lobbied for the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act at marches, rallies, visited the White House, and believed President Joe Biden when he promised the family he would get the legislation passed, Floyd said. But last week, the bipartisan talks around overhauling police laws ended without a deal. So we all know we all saw and watched the video of George Floyd. And so his sister took on really looking to have some kind of reform passed, some type of change that would come about law-wise that would help curb police brutality. And so after a year of them having these talks, having these conversations, they have no deal. They have yet to produce anything. And so now it looks like that they've met a deadline where they're not going to continue to invest. And even after all these things that she's gone through, all the avenues that she's pursued, she hasn't been able to find results. And matter of fact, let's get Lamentations, chapter 4 and verse 17. Because it's crazy how so many of our people believe in the system. So many of our people see things, and a lot of times Esau know what he's doing. He sends people that look like us to compel us to do things. They wanted us to get vaccinated. They have the music videos. They have the commercials. They have these incentives because they know that these are the things that our people flock to. So in the same sense, they always have this push. Make sure that you go vote. Make sure that you invest in the system. But the reality is this system is not built for us. It's not our system. This is not our government. That's why it's ineffective regardless of how much we invest. You have that for me? Lamentations 4 and 17?
Yeah, Lamentations 4 and
Kinda.
17. As for us, our eyes as yet failed for our vain help, and our watching, we have watched for a nation that could not save us.
We have watched for a nation that could not save us. Turn yourself up just a little bit more. We watch for a nation that can't save us. We keep going to Esau. All of our people, in one way or another, oftentimes will go to Esau looking for solutions. Our people, like she said, they went to marches, they did protests, she spoke with the president. Our people constantly invest in different ways. Some are compelling to go vote. Some compel you to come to marches and organize gatherings.
Yeah.
They'll organize gatherings and they'll hope to have this mass that everyone gathers to, and that will bring about reform. Black Lives Matter has a protest like every other week. But where's the reform? Where's the change? Our eyes have looked for vain help. You can't negotiate with the same bully that takes your lunch money and then try to tell them why they shouldn't. If you don't have the power to stop them, what's the incentive? We look for this nation to save us, and it's not going to. Switch it back over. But last week, the bipartisan talks about overhauling police laws ended without a deal. Democrat Senator Cory Booker and Representative Karen Bass and Republican Senator Tim Scott, you know that Jake, he a coon, had spent the last 6 months leading negotiations. So he's been Trump since day one. He's been against a lot of legislation that would have been passed in favor of our people, and he's been in there for 6 months, so-called negotiating. So we talked about this a couple months ago. 100 years after Tulsa Race Massacre, survivors and descendants continue to seek justice in court. I think the last time we talked about this was in May. Here we are in September, and it's still going on. This process, over 100 years after the actual massacre took place. You don't know about it, look it up. Tulsa, Oklahoma, 1921, a.k.a. Black Wall Street. Our people had hospitals, banks, schools, grocery stores. We literally had a established supporting society, right? We had all of our own things, and it was bombed by Edomites, by white men. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, this is the only time or the first time in U.S. history where there were bombs dropped on American soil by Americans. So they flew over Tulsa, Oklahoma, and they dropped bombs onto the cities, the schools, the churches, the apartment buildings, and it was a massacre. So quite a few people died, and now this is one of the women who survived that massacre is still seeking justice 100 years later. So it says, more than 100 years after the Tulsa Race Massacre, survivors and their descendants are still seeking justice in court for the atrocities committed against a once thriving black community. In 1921, a mob of white vigilantes eviscerated Tulsa's Greenwood neighborhood, known at the time as Black Wall Street, due to its affluence and successful business enterprises. The racist violence killed at least 300 people, wounded thousands, and destroyed some 35 acres of commercial and residential property. That was an act of terrorism. As much as America's been in Afghanistan for 20 years, where was the justice with this? Where was the war on terrorism when white men were the terrorists? They killed 300 people, wounded thousands. And even if and then for the sticklers or for those that are like really dedicated to only America, they destroyed 35 acres of commercial and residential property. Where was the uprise? It says the lawsuit seeks to get justice and repair for the 1921 Tulsa Race Massacre and the 100 years of continuing harm, attorney Demario Solomon Simmons, who is representing the plaintiffs, told ABC News. What we say in a lawsuit and what we believe we can prove is that the massacre created what's called a public nuisance, and that nuisance has continued unabated, meaning has not been fixed or repaired since it was instituted. So he said, and they're just calling it a public nuisance. What it really was an act of terrorism. That's really what it was. Fear tactics, killing, destroying things in effort to reach a particular goal. 3 living survivors of the horror. So it's only 3 of them left, mind you. And they're all, I believe, in their hundreds. So if Esau has dragged it out this long, there's a good chance that they're not going to meet this. But they're still trying, right? 3 living survivors of the horror, Leslie Benningfield Randall, Viola Fletcher, and Hughes Van Ellis, appeared in a Tulsa courtroom on Tuesday as Solomon Simmons argued for the case, seeking acknowledgement and accountability from the city and local government. The fate of the suit is now in the hands of District Judge Caroline Wall, who is set to rule on whether it can proceed. So they haven't even decided whether or not they're even going to proceed with this case. It's a well-known, documented event that happened in history that the Edomites in that area came and killed hundreds of people, 300 people, wounded thousands. There's no debating whether or not it happened. And they're still trying to say whether or not they're even going to proceed with judging the matter. Whether or not the people that survived those atrocities will even get any kind of compensation. Not that anything is going to be enough from having what we had, and nothing is going to replace what we lost or those lives. But they're not even sure if they're going to proceed at this point. Take us back over to the PowerPoint. It says, the attorney added that for the court to declare and acknowledge that this massacre occurred and has continued to cause harm can provide so much of a sense of healing. So it's like, like the scriptures say, we look in vain for vain help, a nation that cannot save us. They're the same ones that are putting us in these positions. They're the same ones that are committing the atrocities. They're holding the smoking guns, the bloody knives, and we're going to them seeking justice. How? What justice are you going to get from the killer? So we're just going to look real quick at I believe all these have occurred in September, just a list of all the earthquakes that have been happening. Let's go over to Matthew chapter 24, and we are going to start at verse 7.
Give me 1 second.
Because, Christ said he gave us signs of the times. When the apostles came and asked him, they said, how are we going to know when it's getting closer to the time of you coming back? He said, okay, look for all. This is the criteria. No man is going to know the day or the hour, but when you start seeing these things happen, you're getting close. Matthew 24 and 7.
For nation shall rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom.
He said nation against nation and kingdom against kingdom. So it's going to be geographical locations, but it's also going to be races of people that are going to rise against each other. All the racism, all the persecution, the Jim Crow, the lynchings, all the nations that rise up against each other in battle and in war. America just pulled out of Afghanistan after 20 years. Been in Iraq, been in the Middle East. North Korea, or what is it? I believe it's North Korea, always ready to go to nuclear war. Every January 1st. I kid you not, and we're getting close to January again. Mark my words, around January 1st through 4th, every year, North Korea is like, we're ready for nuclear war if you are. These nations are rising against each other. Go ahead.
And there shall be famines and pestilences and earthquakes in diverse places.
So he says it's going to be famine. It's going to be a lack of resources. It's going to be pestilences, which are sicknesses. COVID, big one. That's the main one that everyone's worried about and talking about right now. And we're going to get to that next. And he said there's going to be earthquakes in diverse places. So when we're looking at this chart, 1 dead, 20 injured after strong earthquake hits Greek island of Crete. So a strong earthquake struck the Greek island of Crete. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Killing 1 person and injuring 20 others. That was September 27th, 2021. There was a recent earthquake in Haiti. It's not mentioned here, but there was What was that one? I can't remember the magnitude, but there was a powerful earthquake in Haiti.
It was around 7. It was 7 something.
It was a 7 something. My condolences to those that lost family in that earthquake. It says earthquake 6.1 registered near Adak, Alaska. 2.7 quake strikes in Carson. We knew that one, or we felt that one right at the end of Day of Atonement, right?
God.
3.5 quake felt near Vala Vista, California. Another 3.2 felt near Coachella. A 4.3 strikes in Compton. Magnitude 3.8, I think that was the one actually. Magnitude 3.8 hits near Coalinga. Another 3.6 rattles Thousand Oaks. Let me see. I think there is a couple. And mind you, all these are just in September. The earliest date right here is September 8th. Or actually, no, I'm sorry, that's unrelated. September 13th. So just within a span of, 2 weeks, there were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 earthquakes in all different parts of the world. And those are just the ones listed by this news provider. Let's see. A powerful earthquake near Acapulco kills at least once. Magnitude 7.0 struck Tuesday night about 30 miles inland from the Pacific resort city of Acapulco in Mexico, September 7th. So these are just all within this month. 3.8 earthquake hits near Ukiah, California, September 4th. 3.8, that was a different one. There was a 3.8 2 days before that in the same place. So look at all these earthquakes in diverse places all over the world, from Greece to Haiti, California, all around America. All these earthquakes are striking, and they're striking frequently. It's not like there is years between them. There's days at best. Get a little bit of a break, and it's another earthquake and another one and another one. And they're happening rapidly. Flip over. 53 cases of highly mutated R1 COVID variant detected in California. So we always talk about COVID, and there's always some kind of new news to talk about regarding COVID. And I think, what were we at the last time? 4 variants. We had the Alpha, which I believe was the original, the Beta, the Delta.
Yeah, I believe we're on Delta right now because Delta is the 3rd letter in that Greek alphabet.
No, there's Delta and Gamma, so I don't think they're going in exact alphabetical.
Oh.
Yeah, there's a Delta, there's an Alpha, a Beta, a Delta, and a Gamma, and then now this one is just called R1.
My goodness.
It says the R1 variant is the new strain. This new strain of COVID-19 researchers are keeping a close eye on. The CDC identified multiple spike protein mutations in this variant. So the virus is always just getting stronger. It's just always getting stronger. It's always advancing. It's always progressing. The R1 variant does carry some mutations that allow it to be less susceptible to the vaccine, says Dr. Joe DeRisi, professor of biochemistry and biophysics at UCSF and co-president of Chan Zuckerberg BioHub. It says, so how would you compare the Delta variant to the R1? What's the difference? Dr. Joe responds, the Delta variant has quite a few more additional mutations in the spike protein that allows it to spread faster. The R1 variant has mutations that were found in the Gamma and Beta variants. Those are what we were just talking about. While it does have some of those worrisome mutations, it doesn't have any more mutations than what we've seen before. So it's crazy because it's just like, if you've ever played a game, there's this game called Plague Incorporated. It was really big with YouTubers probably 6 or 7 years ago. And literally the objective of the game is to create some type of sickness that will spread to the entire earth. It's a game. And I believe it's still on the stores for phones. You can still play it. You can still buy it. And so it's fascinating to see all these different variations of COVID, all these different, each one has a different effect. This one is highly contagious. And then this one's more contagious, but it has less symptoms. And then this one is more powerful, but it's less contagious. And this one is like, man, seems like every month there's another variation. There's another list of symptoms or some kind of strength and weaknesses that this strain has. It's happening constantly. And it just seems to be getting worse. So I guess now, they're on top of all these other strains. The R1 is the next big one that's on the list. According to the CDC, the first cases of the R1 variant in the U.S. were detected at a nursing facility in Kentucky, where both vaccinated and unvaccinated residents were infected. So as much as they're pushing this vaccine, get the vaccine, which, by the way, do not get the vaccine. Do not get the vaccine. They're pushing it constantly trying to get everyone to take this vaccine, and yet the vaccinated and unvaccinated are susceptible to the illness still. What's the purpose? I've seen so many instances where they call them breakthrough cases as if they're just such anomalies, but there are quite a few breakthrough cases. Seems every time someone's infected or the unvaccinated and the vaccinated are together, even the vaccinated gets sick. What's the point of taking this vaccine if it doesn't protect you entirely when you don't know the side effects it has? I don't know how large the study group that they used to produce the vaccine was. I don't know how long they've actually been testing the vaccine. HIV and AIDS has been out for how many decades?
It's funny that you mentioned that too, because it appears that just like HIV and AIDS, that this this virus, it tends to mutate and shift where you can't even isolate it. But that's like anything too, like the cold too. It just keeps growing and changing because the Most High is allowing this to go on without the medical science is trying to prevent or stop it. So the Most High is just making it, adding more fuel to the fire, scenes with all these different pestilences.
So it's always something new. You remember last month we talked about monkeypox, or was that 2 months ago? Talked about monkeypox. It's always something. Go ahead and take us back to the PowerPoint. It says, according to the CDC, the first cases of the R1 variant in the U.S. were detected at a nursing facility in Kentucky where both vaccinated and unvaccinated residents were infected, meaning this variant has the capability to evade the antibodies produced by the vaccine. So that's something to keep an ear out, to keep an eye out for. Los Angeles moves toward barring the unvaccinated from most businesses. So with all these different variations, some of which are becoming not immune, but, well, no, they are immune to the vaccine because they're able to evade the antibodies. You're not guaranteed immunity, right? You're not guaranteed to be side effect free. You're not even guaranteed that you won't die because there have been deaths related to the vaccines. There's been a list of side effects. Some people have lost feeling in their face. Some people have lost control of their nerves. So, different people suffer from different things. I believe one of the popular ones, or one of the increasingly popular ones, is blood clots. So there's all these side effects to the vaccine. People have died behind the vaccine, and you don't even have a legal recourse against the companies that are literally using you as a guinea pig. But you also, Esau is making it very difficult to not have the vaccine because you're not able to even do much within normal society because you're not vaccinated. So it says Los Angeles officials on Wednesday signaled they would vote next week to prohibit unvaccinated people from entering most businesses in the United States' second largest city, one of the nation's most severe crackdowns so far of the COVID-19 pandemic. So we always see that there's those test run cities too, right? Like there's always something that gets implemented, some kind of system. It gets implemented in a large city, and then it slowly starts to spread to the rest of the country. So this time, Los Angeles is the guinea pig. All but one of the city council members present on Wednesday said they support the proposed emergency ordinance, which will require proof of vaccination to enter restaurants, bars, shopping centers, gyms, and other indoor spaces. Other indoor spaces. So they already said you're not going to be able to enter a restaurant, a bar, shopping center, a gym, and they didn't even specify the limit. They just said other indoor spaces. It's not going to be long before you're not able to get into a grocery store. It's not going to be long before you're unable to pretty much do anything or go anywhere. Or it's not going to be too long before you can get pulled over and they need to see your vaccine card. And if you don't have one, you can't be out in public, or you can be jailed for being out in public vaccinated. It just doesn't sound far-fetched with what we're seeing here. It doesn't sound far off. I am sick and tired of yahoos going into Trader Joe's refusing to wear masks, City Council member Paul Kerkorian said in angry remarks. I am fed up with people who want to make this into such a politicized issue. They have lost all semblance of civility in our society. If the proposal is approved next week as expected, Los Angeles would join San Francisco and New York among major U.S. cities requiring proof of vaccination for indoor businesses. The new rule would take effect in November, so very soon, very immediate. Political leaders across the United States, led by Democratic President Joe Biden, have ratcheted up pressure on the unvaccinated in recent weeks. And then when the vaccine first came out, right, there were talks of this vaccine. There were talks of there's going to be hope. There's hope on the horizon. Be on the lookout. The vaccine finally drops. Joe Biden immediately said, I'm not going to mandate the vaccine. It's not going to be required. I think a lot of people called it an abuse of rights, unconstitutional to force people to get the vaccine. And see, that's the game of Esau. It's like, well, I'm not going to technically force you to get it. I'm just going to make your life impossible. I'm not going to make you get it. That would be unconstitutional. That would be a violation of your rights. You just can't go nowhere. Oh, that makes it way better. It says a majority of the Los Angeles, laws requiring proof of vaccinations are deeply controversial in the United States, with many Americans criticizing them as unconstitutional and authoritarian. So people are already saying, like, but he said that himself. The president said that himself early on. I'm not going to force it. But yet, what's happening? Slowly but surely. When he speaketh fair, believe him not. Made it seem like it was going to all be good. Like, it was all cool. Like, hey, it's not going to be required. But now look what's unfolding. Look what's happening. Slowly but surely, we've seen more and more pressure to get a vaccine. First, they offered incentives, right? You get a free donut, a Krispy Kreme. You just show up with your vaccine card. Then, some states entered lotteries, millions of dollars on the line if you enter into this lottery, but you have to have a COVID vaccine card. That was your ticket to get in. And they're just giving away millions to whoever gets chosen. A lot of people went for the money. A lot of people went for the incentives. But for those that didn't, they're like, all right, well, we're going to slowly take away what you're able to do. Slowly limit where you can go, how long you can be there, the requirements to be there, until there's going to be no one left that's either unvaccinated or able to go out. It says a majority of the Los Angeles City Council was prepared to vote in favor of the proof of vaccine measure on Wednesday. They were frustrated in that effort by council member Joe Buscaino, who, by withholding his vote, stood in the way of the so-called unanimous consent. So they're mad at the one person that's like, nah, I don't think this is right. I don't think that we should even do this. Still talking about COVID. U.S. to ease travel restrictions for foreign visitors who are vaccinated against COVID. You want to live the American dream, don't you? Go get you a vaccine. Join the rest of the herd. Join the rest of the guinea pigs. It says the Biden administration will require foreign nationals to be vaccinated against COVID-19 to enter the U.S. So how many of our people that are coming from all these other countries are going to fold because they're like, this is where I need to be. This is where I need to get to. They've lived their whole lives seeing America on TV, seeing stars, superstars, billionaires, playboys, all on YouTube. You see the real popular Dan Bilzerians, the Paul brothers. You see all these people that are just making all this money, and they're like, man, I need to get to America. And now America's saying, well, if you want to come in, you got to get this vaccine. The U.S. will ease travel restrictions for international visitors who are vaccinated against COVID-19 in November, including those from the UK and EU, the White House said Monday. Non-citizens visiting the United States will have to show proof of vaccination and a negative COVID test taken within 3 days of departure, said Jeff Zients, who is leading the nation's COVID response efforts for the White House. The changes will take effect in early November, which the airline industry expects will spur holiday bookings. They must show proof of vaccination prior to boarding a U.S.-bound airplane, Zients said during a press briefing. Airlines and other travel industry groups have clamored for the U.S. to lift the restrictions for months. The Trump administration had first issued the rules, which now apply to more than 30 countries in March 2020. President Joe Biden upheld these rules in January, shortly after taking office. So even though one was Democratic, one was Republic. They're both in league. This is what we're going to do. Esau knows this is what we're going to do. The Biden administration is also tightening rules for unvaccinated U.S. citizens returning home. So even if you've left, somebody's got on a plane, went to go see family, went to go see sites, and now they're like, if you want to come back, you got to get this vaccine. Well, dang. My whole life is in the U.S. Everything that I own is over there. Well, you take this vaccine, you can come back in. It's just the pressure is always on. Satan working overtime. They will need to test 1 day before departure and test again after returning. So anybody that plans on taking a trip or anybody that's left, the pressure is going to be on for any kind of travel for you to already have the vaccine or to get it prior to entering the U.S. So I know everybody saw this. They claimed that this was a false narrative, that the Border Patrol agents weren't using the whips on the migrants, but they only had them for their horses. So as opposed to being biased, I was just going to play the clip and let you be the judge.
House condemned U.S. Border Patrol agents on Monday who were seen using a whip-like cord to block Haitian migrants carrying supplies into the U.S. from Mexico. White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki said she had seen some of the footage, calling it unacceptable. Migrants carrying supplies.
It's fascinating. Not to say that I want him to go after them, but you see the women and children they're not really targeting. They're really targeting the men. Because when they come over, what are they going to have to do if they have no man? The man's not able to work. He's unable to provide. They're going to have to go into the system.
Into the U.S. from Mexico. White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki said she had seen some of the footage, calling it unacceptable.
We just saw this footage. It's horrible to watch. I just have to get more information on it. I can't imagine what the scenario is where that would be appropriate. I'm certainly not suggesting that, but we've just seen the footage earlier this morning.
Reuters drone footage captured hundreds of mostly Haitian migrants crossing back and forth between Ciudad Acuña in Mexico and the sprawling camp across the border in Del Rio, Texas, to buy food and water that was short in supply on the U.S. side. Reuters witnesses saw mounted officers in cowboy hats blocking the paths of migrants, and the apparent use of horse reins swung to threaten the migrants. At the White House, Psaki was pressed over whether disciplinary action would be taken.
Is it the president's stance or the White House's stance that whoever these border agents are using what seems to be whips on migrants, that they would be fired or at least never be able to do that again?
Of course they should never be able to do it again. I don't know what the circumstances would be. It's obviously horrific, the footage.
U.S.
It's semantics. The reporter stated they should be fired so that we can assure that they'll never be able to do this again. And she said, well, of course they should never be able to do it again. But will they be fired? You didn't even address what was stated to you. They already know they're going to protect their own. What was that in? What was that in Texas? They know what's going on down there.
Yeah, that was.
You got white boys on horses with whips rolling around, talking about we need it for our horses. Who uses a whip on a horse? Don't you have spurs? I'm not a cowboy. I don't have too much experience with horses, but I believe that the what is that called? That bit that you put in their mouths, that's what steers them. And you have spurs on the back of your boots that they're clearly wearing, that when you kick them in the legs, give them a little nudge, they take off. You do not need a whip for a horse if you're on it and riding it. How would you even snap the whip? What are you snapping it outside of something that's outside of the horse? It's common sense. Go ahead, switch it back over.
Border Patrol Chief Raul Ortiz said the incident was being investigated to make sure that there was not an unacceptable response by law enforcement. While visiting Del Rio on Monday, Department of Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas said the long reins are used by mounted officials to, quote, ensure control of the horse, but also vowed to investigate the facts. The camp under a bridge spanning the Rio Grande has become the latest flashpoint for U.S. authorities seeking to stem a flow of migrants fleeing gang violence, extreme poverty, and natural disasters in their home countries. Hundreds of migrants have been turned around on the Mexico side, leaving uncertainty whether they'll be deported on flights organized by U.S. authorities. Mayorkas said he expects between 1 to 3 daily repatriation flights back to Haiti, and stressed in a news conference that if individuals try to enter the U.S. illegally, they will be returned.
So you be the judge. You don't need a whip for a horse. They very clearly were swinging the whips around, because if it was exclusively for your horse, then why have it out? They're investigating themselves. Well, I'm sure they'll clear themselves of any wrongdoing. There's been no firings. Where's the justice? They pretend that, I really feel like they have these conferences and these press conferences for the sake of the people, so that the people don't actually all come together and say, wow, you know what, this is really unjust. This is some serious tyranny. We should stand up against this. No, they're coming out and they're saying, yeah, we're investigating. Everyone stay calm. Don't you talk about any of that revolution. Don't you talk about any of that reform. Don't you talk about any of that Israelite stuff. Y'all just stay calm. We're going to investigate it.
Con, yeah. All it is just as a matter of talking points to keep up, the 1960s, everything, all that, Martin Luther King's, dream. All it is just to keep that illusion alive. But the reality is, Scripture says we're in captivity, we're slaves. It's only natural that they would do that to enforce, us as slaves. So see it as it is.
Yeah, like talking points. They just know it. Say certain things. This will convey this kind of message and make it sound a certain way. But you saw very clearly, if you're not paying attention or if you're not like really analyzing, she didn't acknowledge that they would be fired. She didn't acknowledge that there would be anything more than an investigation and that they should never do it again. But what action was taken? You know what I'm saying? Go ahead, take us back over to the PowerPoint. Villanueva responds after Rand report says gang-like cliques continue to exist among deputies. Gangs in the LAPD. Oh, wait a minute there. Gangs in the LAPD. Los Angeles County Sheriff Alex Villanueva on Wednesday blasted a think tank study that found his department still harbors deputy-run gangs and cliques. The report recommends Villanueva and other department leaders work harder to discourage deputies from joining these groups. And how do they do that? They're not firing those that have been found guilty or those that have been clearly associated. Mind you, this is the LAPD. Gangs started in LA. They know something about gangs. They know they have gang units, whole departments, whole groups, task force that are dedicated to stopping and eliminating gang activity. You see the movies. They know the areas. They know the streets. They have moles. They have rats that they send in. They have known affiliates. You get out on parole, they already got a list of known associates that you can't be around, certain areas that you can't be a part of. They have the tactic of tattoo checking the body for any kind of gang markings or gang-related tattoos. So they have all these tactics that they've been using since, the 80s, the 90s?
God.
And they aren't able to determine amongst their own ranks who's a gang member? And I actually saw, it's not included in this article. I'll try to see if we can get it next month. I believe they have tattoos.
They do.
They do. Don't they have a tattoo? It's like a skull or something?
Yeah, that's one of many police gangs.
So they have gang markings. If they actually employed the tactics that they use in the streets, they would quickly be able to identify who's in this gang. But they're saying, oh, well, you got to come up with something to discourage them. How is that going to work? If prison is like that, everybody says that about prison. You gotta, there is no, you gotta be on your own. You have to click up, because when stuff goes down, you already know what it is and who you're fighting with. You better figure that out quickly. I can only imagine that the same thing exists within the police force. They have guns, they have weapons, they have resources. You don't think that when you come into this system and there's all these cliques and gangs within the police force that you don't need to find your place? Or very clearly, you have to figure it out if you want to survive. Which gang are you a part of? Who's going to pull up when you get into a situation? Says they were not interested in the truth, Villanueva said of the researchers from the Santa Monica-based nonprofit Rand Corporation. So this is a nonprofit. I'm not sure what their stake is to prove that there are the gangs, but there's one of them right there. For years, the sheriff's department has been accused of allowing secret deputy-only gangs within its stations throughout the county that encourage aggressive on-the-job behavior. So you wonder why there's so many civil suits, so many deaths, so many excessive force reports, so many cover-ups, so many drug plants, so many innocent people going to jail. You wonder why that's happening, but there are literal gangs that are encouraging the officers to do that are encouraging the officers to indulge themselves in that type of behavior and to target people and be excessive. I mean, man, people have said for years that the cops are the biggest gang out there. In 2019, the county commissioned the RAND Corporation to look into the existence of these groups and how to deal with them. RAND's report was released earlier this month and found that the deputy gang still exists and divisive to the department, and that department's leadership needs to do a better job discouraging deputies from joining them. So here's just a thinking question, some food for thought. If they can identify the gang and that the gang still exists, surely they had to have identified members. So when they release this report, somebody somewhere has the list of names of everyone that is in that gang. Somebody somewhere already has a list of deputies that they saw with gang tattoos, that they heard engaging in conversations with other ranking members of the gang, and that they saw engage in some type of behavior, or they were able to pull reports showing, hey, they're told to engage in excessive force. Officer so-and-so has 17 counts this year. He's probably a part of this gang. He's been protected. He's probably part of the gang. Someone out there has the names, and yet these officers are still on the job, probably on patrol on these streets right now, killing our people, hemming our people up, harassing our people, and yet all they're saying is you got to find a way to discourage them. How do you discourage somebody from joining the gang? What kind of action is that? And what is the discouragement going to do? Come on, man. Villanueva said of the report's 37 recommendations for the department, 30 were already being implemented, and the other 7 are currently being considered. So I guess they have 30 different ways, but to try to discourage people from joining the gang.
Congresswoman Maxine Waters is demanding a federal investigation of the alleged deputy gang known as the Executioners. In a letter today to the Department of Justice, Waters says that she also wants a broader investigation of the LA County Sheriff's Department for potential civil rights and constitutional violations. The Executioners operate out of the Compton station and came to light when one alleged member testified there were 10 to 20 other deputies at the station with this same tattoo. Sheriff Alex Villanueva denies that deputy gang.
Wait a minute. So you already got somebody that
came when out. One alleged member testified.
I mean, look at the picture. That's at somebody's desk. That's somebody's mouse pad. They already know the name of the gang. They know the logo of the gang. They have an officer on camera confessing that, yes, this gang exists, and there are 10 to 20 other deputies currently at the station with a tattoo. He didn't say these guys are in the gang and, now you guys got to go investigate them, because that'll be, they'll have a, what is that called? Pretty much you're innocent until proven guilty. They'll have that going for them. They'll have benefit of the doubt. He said they got tattoos. They are marked. It's really not much of a conversation or an investigation that needs to proceed at that point. Whoever this is that has the logo on their desk and their mouse, that they're clearly part of the gang. Clearly. And if the news went in there and sees all this paraphernalia everywhere, where's the recourse? We look in vain for a nation that cannot save us. They call themselves the Executioners, the killers. Literally rolling around the streets saying, who can we catch? Who can we find?
The scriptures talk about spiritual wickedness in high places. And it deals with, and I believe there's another article that's going to be brought out too, but one of the main reasons that they're not necessarily getting rid of them or just transferring them to different departments is it's a global, or at least a multinational thing, to where these gangs are necessary for that system, because they're supplying the drugs, they're doing a lot of the human trafficking, and all that is stepping stones to a lot of the actual like spiritual wickedness and ritual stuff that the higher elites and the Illuminati and such like that, whatever you want to call the Masons, they use them as their foot soldiers, so they're above the law that's given to the states. So they're not gonna, these people, they have a what do you call it,
Immunity.
Yeah, exactly. They have immunity to the established law of the land, which isn't even righteous according to the Most High anyway. So it's the hypocrisy of spiritual wickedness,
Real talk. Because come on now. Like I said, it just, of course they're just wheels or cogs in this machine, because they know the name of the gang. They know the logo. They have a picture of somebody's calf with a tattoo on it. You go into the station, these fools are bold enough to have had a mouse pad and mouse with the gang tattoo, the gang logo on it. You got people in there with tattoos. Unless the tattoos are only on their bodies or only in secret places that you can't see, if they walking around with them on their calves, everybody knows who's in the gang. It's no secret. They're just literally not going to fire them, because even the higher ups and the people that you're calling on to investigate them are part of the gangs themselves. The chief might be the gang leader, and everybody's like, "What are you doing, chief?" "We're working on it." "How are you doing it?" "We have 30 different methods to discourage." Okay, you're trying to discourage new members. What are you doing about the clearly identifiable current members? What's being done? So our people continue to die at the hands of these corrupt cops, these Edomites, and these executioners. Let's get verse 18 in Lamentations chapter 4. So he said, we look for vain help. We look for vain help, and it's not coming. Amon, if you get a chance, can you get the door real quick, and I'll read the scripture?
Khan, I'll get that right now.
The Wadak. It says, verse 18, Lamentations chapter 4, verse 18. They hunt our steps, that we cannot go in our streets. Our end is near. Our days are fulfilled, for our end is come. He said they hunt our steps. These executioners, they're looking for somebody. They're looking for a kill, because it's just like gang culture. You ain't a real one till you kill one. So if they're the executioners, you probably can't even get your tattoo, or you can't even really get your put on until you kill somebody. So now, not every day is there going to be a violent crime that you get to address, but, oh, man, I want my stripes. So what are you going to do? You're going to go find somebody to kill.
Pick some Mexicans and niggas.
They're going to find somebody to kill, playing a gun on him. Well, he had a gun. He reached for it. All the stories of the corrupt police in Compton. And then you wonder why people is running up on them and just start dumping clips into them, because people see the corruption. People got family that they losing at the hands of these so-called executioners. People are looking for that justice. Said they hunt our steps that we cannot go in our streets. All the so-called Negroes and Latinos, the children of Israel dwelling in Compton. And you got these people that's literally hunting them. Literally looking for one of them, catching them slipping. Let me catch you off in this alley. Let me catch you in this dark space. Let me catch you over here by yourself. And you see yellow tape so often in Compton where stuff be boxed off, and you think that it was some kind of active gang violence. It might be one of these officers. It might be plainclothes cops looking to get they put on. You see what I did over there on Long Beach Boulevard and Rosecrans? You see what I did over there on Alameda? You see what I did right there at the station? Yeah, that was me, man. Let me get my tattoo. They're hunting our steps. They're killing our people.
Testified there were 10 to 20 other deputies at the station with this same tattoo.
All you gotta do is walk in the station and say, "Hey, everybody, show me your calf. Everybody, just show me your arms and legs. Start there. Let them all go."
Sheriff Alex Villanueva denies that deputy gangs exist.
He denies that the gangs even exist. So you
We
got
would
all
like to
that
take some
evidence.
time out to celebrate.
You have all those people that have these tattoos, officer on record, a separate nonprofit organization that did an investigation, reporters that have evidence, pictures, and video, and yet he even denies that the gang even exists. Blows my mind. If a subgroup of any set of employees engages in misconduct, that is when I, as an employer, can intervene, Villanueva said. They're RAND researchers claiming that we can just ban groups outright. Well, this is not constitutionally permissible. So he's saying like, oh no, that's their constitutional right to be in a gang. I mean, come on, man. I mean, it's insane. Insane. More than 2 million U.S. school kids, report using e-cigarettes this year. I remember the Juuls, the vaping. An estimated 2.6 million, 2.06, 2,060,000 U.S. middle and high school students are using electronic cigarettes with Puff Bar, Vuse, and Juul among the most popular products, according to data from a 2021 survey analyzed by health officials. The data, published on Thursday in the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, Morbidity and Mortality weekly report, showed the use of the potentially addictive nicotine, first of all, it's proven to be addictive, devices may have declined from 3.6 million students in 2020. So they're saying that it's only 2.06 million using it, and that's down from the 3.6 million in 2020. Wow. All these kids that have access to nicotine, is that not the addictive ingredient in cigarettes?
Yes, it is.
So they took that, and they put all these fun colors and flavors and donut-flavored Juul and pineapple-flavored so-and-so and what's another? Skittles, and they do all this. It's clearly appealing to children. What's the restriction on these? Do you have to be 21 to purchase one of these devices?
I'm pretty sure they actually keep it around the same age bracket of not 18 or such. But I have to look up to that myself again. But they're getting them, you know.
Let's look it up real quick.
Yeah.
Because there's all these kids that have that. Don't get me wrong. There are kids that go to school with alcohol, but there just are not 3.6 million of them. They're just not that popular. Let me see. How old?
I mean, for one, if just like back in the day, and still sure is happening today, if high schoolers are able to get beer and be able to get people to buy them beer, I'm pretty sure they can get anybody, you know, to get them these cigarettes if needed to, you know, the same ways. Beer run, e-cig run, weed run, what have you. They're getting it.
Yeah. It says, okay, so I guess the legal age is 21. The minimum age to buy Juul products at U.S. retail locations is 21. But yet there are still 3.6 million kids that have them. It said middle school and high school age. So not all of these are 18-year-old high schoolers. There are middle school students that are smoking nicotine, vaping. I already have that addiction that early. However, authors of the study caution that estimates based on this year's survey conducted mostly online cannot be compared to results from surveys done in previous years collected from classrooms. So mind you, there was only 2.06 million middle and high school students that said they do online. They're not even actually able to observe the students or search their belongings or see who on campus is doing it because COVID has restricted school to being online. So just 2.06 million certified online. Yeah, I do it. But how many of them didn't that have these products? The use of e-cigarettes among children and teens has been a growing public health concern. Makers of the devices came under the scrutiny of health regulators for allegedly targeting their marketing at youth and concerns that a new generation will become hooked on nicotine. Now, I mean, come on now. We got flavors like donuts and the packaging's all colorful. You don't see cigarette packagings being that colorful. They don't look all that fancy. They don't look all that advertised towards kids. Not that much. But when you have donut-flavored, pineapple-flavored, Skittle-flavored, sweet-tasting smoke, I mean, come on, man. It's clearly targeted towards kids.
And if it's not the nicotine that gets you, I mean, that main ingredient, which makes it differ from a regular cigarette or even, blunt, whatever you smoke that you shouldn't be, is the ingredient's called propylene glycol. And if you guys know what fog machines are, when you go to concerts and stuff like that, it's basically that thick fog that lingers around, for however long. That's part of the ingredient that they're smoking and taking in to, their lungs and stuff like that. So are you defiling your body? I mean, the results, test results, medical results are there to see if you want. I don't think I want to inhale fog machine, concert fog machine into my lungs like that.
Right.
I'm not that desperate.
Con. And here's the irony. Manufacturers argue that the products help smokers quit. What?
Yeah.
So you're addicted to nicotine through the tobacco cigarettes that you smoke. In order to get you to not be addicted, they're going to give you a nicotine product to help you stop.
Con.
What? And instead of, I know it's propylene glycol, that's one of the ingredients, but it is still, it's nicotine still. I know you have an addiction with this, so I'm going to give you this other form of it, and this one's going to help you stop. No, it's actually been just getting worse and getting to a younger generation. This is crazy. I mean, look at this. Puff Bar, a brand of disposable e-cigarettes that are sold in various flavors, such as Blueberry Ice, was the most popular among high school students, followed by Views, Smoke, and Juul. Puff Bar and Juul were most popular among middle schoolers, according to the survey conducted from January 18th to May 21st. So, Broken Promise. Lawsuit claims ingredient in some J&J shampoos causes hair loss. So if you use this, I know this one, the Argan Oil or the OGX conditioners, they're at Walmart for sure. They're at Walmart. I think I've seen them at Ralph's, Target, a lot of places where our people are going to go. So if you're using this conditioner, it is there's a current lawsuit regarding hair loss. There are just a few of the words that convinced, these are just a few of the words that convinced Larissa Whipple to try OGX hair care products. Little did she know she would later end up filing a nationwide class action lawsuit against Johnson & Johnson over the shampoos and conditioners she says caused significant hair loss and scalp irritation. So if you really tender-headed, which I'm one of those people, like abnormally tender-headed, it might be the shampoo. Been using it for years. Feel like it's helping, softens your hair, but then you be extra tender-headed. It could have been this all along. At the center of the Illinois women's concerns is an ingredient found in the Johnson & Johnson products in question called DMDM hydantone. At least one ingredient in the products, DMDM, is a formaldehyde donor known to slowly leave formaldehyde when coming into contact with water. So they already know that it leaves formaldehyde residue on your scalp only when it comes in contact with water, and yet they put it in a shampoo and a conditioner. I mean, that sounds very much intentional. Whipple says formaldehyde donors like DMDM, which is sometimes used in cosmetics and hair care products, have been linked to allergies, rashes, hair loss, and cancer. I wonder how many of our people right now are suffering from one of those things, and it's directly related to the conditioner that they've been using for years. Allergies, rashes, hair loss, and cancer. The National Toxicology Program by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services has recognized formaldehyde as a known human carcinogen. So and this is one thing that I've always noticed. When a company like this, you're talking about people out there with allergies. That may not be life-threatening, but that is a significant change to your style of life, right? Your way of life. Rashes may not be life-threatening, but a big change to your way of life. Hair loss, that's a little more severe. May not be deadly, but it is a severe change to your way of life. That's a huge thing for a lot of people is hair. That's a big thing for me. People love their hair. Our people's hair is special. So it could cause you to lose your hair and cancer. That's the whopper. What kind of cancer? How much does it contribute? How many cases were the people who have cancer currently were using this product? And the crazy part about America, they'll have class action lawsuits and they'll settle for an amount of money that's less than the company's actually worth. So the company will continue to operate. The company will continue to have products out there, continue to flourish, but all these people that have died or their way of life has been drastically altered, they'll receive little to nothing oftentimes in class action settlements. Class action settlements hardly ever grant people large amounts of money. It's probably going to be let's just say if it's $1 billion and it's 1 billion people, you're not going to get anything. If it's a $10 billion settlement and 80 billion people, you're going to get even less. So they allow these companies to continue on, even though they could very clearly or very directly be responsible for who knows how many deaths. Who knows how many cases of cancer? Who knows? It's crazy. Some of the products questioned in the lawsuit include Biotin Collagen Shampoo and Conditioner, Argan Oil of Morocco Shampoo and Conditioner, the anti-breakage, the one that causes you to lose your hair, is an anti-breakage and keratin oil shampoo and conditioner. The Irony, Detox and Pomegranate and Ginger Shampoo, Marula Oil and Shampoo, Extra Strength Hydrate and Repair. So repair, somebody who already has hair that's having an issue, they come and get this. It's like, it makes it worse. Argan Oil of Morocco Shampoo, Hair, and Conditioner. The products are sold at stores like Target, Ulta, CVS, Walmart, and Walgreens. So all those places, if you have any of that shampoo, be sure to get rid of it. Actually, while we're talking about products, let's get this one. Manufacturers allowed baby food contaminated with heavy metals to remain on shelves, lawmakers say. Are they going to be shut down? Toxic metals, heavy metals, and they allowed it to remain on shelves. Gerber and Beechnut failed to properly test and remove baby foods with dangerous levels of inorganic arsenic from the market, while Sprout Foods Incorporated, Walmart's parent choice, and Plum Organics, formerly owned by Campbell, were lax in testing and controlling for heavy metals such as lead, mercury, and cadmium, according to the U.S. congressional report released Wednesday by the House Subcommittee on Economic and Consumer Policy. So Gerber is a huge one. I think that's like one of the most popular brands. Everywhere you go, any store you go into, hell, you find gas stations and liquor stores. If they have that little mini mart in there, they might mess around and have some Gerber. And they have high levels of inorganic arsenic and metals that could be potentially harming or killing your children. And they knew that it was there. They became laxed on it. Will they be shut down because they could have cost who knows how many infant deaths? Let's find out. Today's report reveals that companies not only underreport the high levels of toxic content in their baby food, but also knowingly keep toxic products on the market. So it's one thing that they're relaxed in their testing, but it's another thing that they already know that these things are toxic and could be potentially fatal, but they allowed it to stay. Look up the effects of mercury in the body. Look up the effects of mercury on the brain. And mind you, these are underdeveloped bodies and underdeveloped brains. And they're already experiencing or already have deadly levels of these metals in their system that will continue on with them and develop with them. And they knowingly did this. But let's see what the recourse will be. It'll probably be a class action lawsuit, and everybody will get like $2 and some cents, some minor amount of money, while this company that could have been potentially killing children will just go on and continue. It says, several baby food manufacturers CNN contacted disagree with the subcommittee's assessment, and all say they are committed to working closely with the U.S. Food and Drug Administration to address the issue. Everybody's working so hard to be able to stop the things that they're really allowing. Everyone, all these you see in all these articles, whenever there's an issue, they all claim that they're investigating. And they also all claim that the company that came out with the investigation that already said this is what's happening is invalid. Arsenic and other heavy metals are natural elements found in soil, water, and air. Rice, which is a common ingredient in baby cereal, is grown submerged in water and is especially good at absorbing inorganic arsenic, the most toxic form. 95% of tested baby foods in the U.S. contain toxic metal, report says. Exposure to heavy metals in baby food become a growing concern for parents after Healthy Babies Bright Future, a coalition of advocates committed to reducing babies' exposure to neurotoxic chemicals, tested 168 baby foods from major manufacturers in the U.S. 168. The testing found 95%, that is almost all, 95% of sampled baby foods contained lead. 73%, still pretty high percentage, contained arsenic. 75%, 3/4, contained cadmium. And 32% contained mercury. 1/4 of the baby's food contained all 4 heavy metals. So 25% of it had all of them. I wonder, and it makes you wonder, I wonder in what locations they were testing this baby food. I wonder where they got really laxed and whose babies have been eating this contaminated food. That quarter that had all 4 of those metals, I wonder what stores and what locations, what zip codes, and what demographic was in the area of where they were testing. The results mimicked a previous study by the U.S. Food and Drug Administration that found 1 or more of the same metals in 33 of 39 types of baby food tested. Even in trace amounts, extremely small amounts, these contaminants can alter the developing brain and erode a child's IQ, said Jane Houlihan, research director for Healthy Babies, Bright Futures. The impacts add up with each meal or snack a baby eats, especially when the levels are as high as Healthy Babies, Bright Future research and subcommittee's new report show. So it's high amounts all across the board, and it increases every time they eat. So if they found it in 95% of the food, chances are if you had 10 jars of baby food, it was in each one of those jars. Let's just say statistically, it's in 9 of those jars. That means 9 times people fed their children those toxic metals. 9 times people fed their children this poison. In an earlier investigation released in February, the subcommittee looked at internal testing documents from 4 major baby food manufacturers: Gerber, Beech Nut Nutrition, Nurture Incorporated, which sells Happy Baby products, and Heinz Celestial Group Incorporated, which sells Earth's Best Organic Baby Food. The document showed some products contained levels of lead, mercury, cadmium, and inorganic arsenic were far above limits set for bottled water by the FDA and the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency. Groundwater can easily absorb heavy metals from the soil, and old lead pipes leak, so drinking water is a key exposure to heavy metals. So it's already in your water, but now it's also in the baby food. Inorganic arsenic, lead, cadmium, and mercury are in the World Health Organization's top 10 chemicals of concern for infants and children. So all those things are in the top 10. Like, these are the most dangerous things you can have, and they're in your baby food. Every spoonful that we're handing our children could be potentially poisoning them. That's a significant concern, the report said, because each ingredient may have levels of toxins that fall under the cutoff for safety, but when added together, they may exceed government standards. Take us back over to the PowerPoint. Families and victims in California synagogue. While we're addressing this, Aman, you have anything you want to add in here?
No, keep going.
Okay, kind of. Families and victims in California synagogue attack speak at the shooter's sentencing. So I don't know if you heard about this. San Diego, a 22-year-old former nursing student was denied a chance to address a packed courtroom, so he wasn't even allowed to speak, before a judge sentenced him Thursday to life in prison without the possibility of parole for busting into a Southern California synagogue on the last day of Passover in 2019 with a semi-automatic rifle, killing 1 worshiper and wounding 3 others. So Buddy got tired of it. Last day of Passover, busts in there and starts shooting. An agreement with prosecutors that spared John T. Ernest the death penalty left little suspense about the outcome, but the hearing gave 13 victims and families a chance to address the killer. Many gave heart-wrenching accounts of how their lives were upended and how determined they were to preserve despite such devastating loss. Ernest's attorney, John O'Connell, said his client wanted to make a statement, but San Diego Superior Court Judge Peter Deda refused, saying he did not want to create a political forum for white supremacist views. I'm not going to let him use this as a platform to add to his celebrity, the judge said, pointing to comments that Ernest made to police when he was arrested, hand gestures to the audience during a previous hearing, and his probation report. Ernest, who was tied to a device that prevented him from turning to the audience, showed no visible reaction during the 2-hour hearing as speakers called him a low-life coward, an evil animal, and a monster. A prosecutor asked Detta to consider his refusal to let Ernest speak after conferring with the defense attorney about the substance of his remarks, but the judge didn't budge. So he went into this synagogue. I think he shot one person, he killed one person, wounded 3 others. And this was back in 2019. So they kept him in jail for a little while, and now they're finally having his trial. So something interesting to look at. You know, we know the blasphemy of them which say they are Jews and are not. Bangkok on alert as deadly floods hit a third of Thailand. So this is what's going on in Thailand right now. Thailand is rushing to protect its capital, Bangkok, from flooded waters after inundations in the country's northern and central provinces killed 6 people. Seems like every month there's floods all over the world. What was it? New York had flash floods. Thailand, Australia. I think Germany had some floods recently. I mean, man, it's just, the world is changing rapidly. Soldiers on Tuesday set up barriers and sandbags to protect archaeological ruins and landmarks, as well as neighborhoods in the old royal capital, Ayutthaya, some 60 kilometers or 37 miles north of Bangkok. We will give people a warning if there is a sign the water level is rising and if there is a risk of flash floods, Bangkok Governor Aswin Kwamang said on Tuesday. The level of the Chao Phraya River, which snakes through Bangkok after winding almost 248 miles from the north, is steadily rising amid tropical storm Dianmu, which has hit 30 of the country's 76 provinces. Seasonal monsoons may worsen the flooding, which extends to about a third of Thailand, officials say on Monday. Pumping stations were being used to reduce the potential damage. So all these countries, the earth is, the Most High is visiting judgment upon all these different nations. All these different nations that aren't prone to flooding, that haven't seen this, if ever, in decades or centuries. And now all these places back to back are being flooded and people are dying. Something to consider, man. About 70,000 homes are estimated to be affected, but the kingdom's central region the worst hit. So the center of the kingdom is the worst hit, the Thai Disaster Prevention and Mitigation Department said. Couple more. Amon, are you able to read this from back there?
Khan, the title, yes.
Yeah, and then the article afterwards.
Let me see if I can zoom in. But yeah, the title says a 96-year-old who worked at a Nazi camp has been caught after skipping her trial.
What about this?
Yeah, in Itzehoe, Germany, a former secretary for the SS commander of the Stutthof concentration camp skipped the planned start Thursday of her trial in Germany and more than 11,000 counts of accessory to murder, officials said. She was picked up several hours later after the court issued an arrest warrant. The 96-year-old woman left her home near Hamburg in a taxi on Thursday morning, a few hours before proceedings were due to start at the state court in Itzeby. Court spokesperson Frederick Milhofer said.
So this, mind you, this woman is 96. She is ancient at this point, at least by today's standards. 96-year-old person is, there's very few that are strong, that are able-bodied. She's 96, and they're trying to hold her accountable for 11,000 counts of accessory to murder. 96. Now, when was World War II? What did it end in, 1942?
Yeah, like that.
Way back. It's crazy that the country is, you know, Germany is holding its old criminals accountable for having ever come against the so-called Jews, the Jewish, right? Really the Khazars. they're still being held accountable. They're still seeking out and persecuting their enemies. And yet, what reparations, what results, what justice have we seen from slavery, from the Jim Crow era? Hell, we saw earlier in this segment that in the Tulsa, Oklahoma survivors are still looking for justice 100 years later. They and Germany still holding its criminals accountable from World War II crimes. I mean, man, if they desired for it to be done, it would be done. But our eyes have hoped. We've looked for vain help in a nation that cannot save us, and a nation that will not save us. The 96-year-old woman left her home. Dropping down. The court issued the warrant and delayed the reading of the indictment until the next scheduled hearing on October 19th, because that couldn't be done in the defendant's absence. The accused woman previously had announced that she didn't want to come to court, but the statement did not provide sufficient grounds for detaining her ahead of the trial. Given the woman's age and condition, she had not been expected actively to evade the trial. The court said Thursday afternoon that the defendant had been caught and police would bring her to the court. German news agency DPA reported a doctor was to examine whether she was fit to be jailed before the court decides whether or not to put her in custody. So even though she's 96, they're like, nah, you still got to pay. They're still trying to get this so-called justice. And they literally have to examine her before she's even arrested, because they're like, we don't even know if she's going to make it. And yet they still want to put their enemies behind bars and get what little life she has left, because how dare you rise against our kingdom? Look how they do. But where's our justice? Where's our reparations? Where are the repercussions of those that have wronged, killed, persecuted us, the accessories to our murders? Where is it? The court said, we read that. Prosecutors argued that the woman was part of the apparatus that helped the Nazis' Stutthof camp function during World War II more than 75 years ago. Whew. The court said in a statement before the trial that the defendant allegedly aided and abetted those in charge of the camp in the systematic killing of those imprisoned there between June 1943 and April 1945 in her function as a stenographer and typist in the camp commandant's office. So she wasn't even the gas chamber operator. They trying to charge her for accessory to murder, and she was typing stuff. Hey, I need this report on my desk by Monday. Yes, sir, right away. Clickety-clack. They trying to charge her with 11,000 counts of accessory to murder just for being on the camp, just for being around. But they can't. But they won't stop the police gangs right there in Compton when they got people that have tattoos on their body. Got two more. The 10 biggest ransomware attacks of 2021. So if you've been seeing the recent news, I've seen quite a bit, right? I've seen a lot of this lately, especially T-Mobile had a data breach. There was that thing with the gas a few months ago where there was the pipeline's infrastructure was hijacked, and they had to pay something like $11 million. So there's just been an increase in cyber attacks, especially this year. If you've never seen it, there's this movie called Snowden. Talks about Edward Snowden, a former FBI, or no, I'm sorry, not FBI. I think he was a CIA and NSA agent who exploited a lot of the tactics of the United States and the government. You should look those things up because it's all about cyber warfare, and that's exactly what's happening. Ransomware attacks on Colonial Pipeline, JBS Foods, and other major organizations made headlines in 2021 and showed no sign of slowing down. Across the world, hackers are exploiting security weaknesses and holding the data of companies, governments, and healthcare organizations hostage, sometimes demanding tens of millions of dollars in payment. Recent ransomware attacks in the news. Over the past few months and years, we have seen an increase in ransomware attacks, really over the past few months. Many of them high-profile attacks. Recent cyber attacks that have used ransomware as their attack vector include attacks perpetrated against the Colonial Pipeline, Steamship Authority of Massachusetts, JBS, the world's largest meatpacker, and the Washington, D.C. Metropolitan Police Department. These attacks against U.S. companies and organizations result in shutdown of critical infrastructure, which can create shortages increased cost of goods and services, financial loss due to shutdown of operations, and loss of money due to having to pay the ransom to the hackers and worse. So all these companies, they're losing. As much as America makes you believe that it's this impenetrable fortress, they're having to pay out. They can't get it back. They can't stop these hackers. They're just having to keep paying them over and over and over again. Healthcare ransomware. During times of crisis, many hackers take advantage of upheaval and disorder and look for potential monetary gain. With the onset of the COVID-19 crisis in 2020, there were increased attention on cyber attacks in the healthcare space. A study by Comparitech has shown that ransomware had a huge financial impact on the healthcare sector, with over $20 billion lost in impacted revenue, lawsuits, and ransom paid in 2020 alone. Over the course of the year, over 600 hospitals, clinics, and other healthcare organizations were impacted by 92 ransomware attacks. So they're, like I said, they're paying out. All that information that's being stolen, for one, they're not even identifying who's doing it. They're just saying hackers. Are they foreign hackers? Are they domestic hackers? Are you paying the money and they're giving it back? Do they have copies? There's so many questions. CEO of cybersecurity firm FireEye, Kevin Mandia, shed some light on why these healthcare organizations were targeted. Pharmaceuticals, hospitals, healthcare, public companies, organizations that don't have the talent and skills to defend themselves. They're getting sucker punched, Mr. Mandia said. But mind you, if it's medical records and it's, hospitals, healthcare, public companies, all these things that are really important, it seems like you would prioritize protecting those a little bit more. But he's saying they don't have the means to defend themselves. So we're just going to take a look at some of the high-profile ransomware attacks that have occurred so far. So we know recently the Colonial Pipeline. Of all of the cyber and ransomware attacks in 2021 so far, the breach of Colonial Pipeline in late April had the most news coverage. As Touro College, Illinois cybersecurity program director Joe Giordano notes, the Colonial Pipeline attack made such an impact because the pipeline is an important part of the national critical infrastructure system. Taking the system down disrupted gas supplies all along the east coast of the United States, causing chaos and panic. As most Americans are directly impacted by gasoline shortages, this attack hit close to home for many consumers. The DarkSide gang was behind the attack and targeted the firm's billing system and internal business network, leading to widespread shortages in multiple states. To avoid further disruption, Colonial Pipeline eventually gave in to the demands and paid the group $4.4 million in Bitcoin. So they weren't able to stop them. They just had to pay them to get themselves out of it because they were losing too much money. And there's just the dark side. At around the same time in early May 2021, the same notorious hacker group that targeted Colonial Pipeline, DarkSide, also targeted Brenntag, a chemical distribution company. That sounds dangerous. After stealing 150 gigabytes worth of data, DarkSide demanded the equivalent of $7.5 million in Bitcoin. Brenntag soon caved to the demands and ended up paying $4.4 million. Although it was a little more than half of the original demand, it still stands as one of the highest ransomware payments in history. As of yet, the money has not been recovered. So they don't even know. They know that the DarkSide gang is doing it, but they don't know who's behind that, and they aren't even able to get the money back. Also in May this year, the computer manufacturer Acer was attacked by the REvil hacker group, the same group responsible for an attack on London foreign exchange firm TravelX. The $50 million ransom stood out as the largest known to date. REvil hackers exploited a vulnerability in a Microsoft Exchange server to get access to Acer's files and leaked images of sensitive financial documents and spreadsheets. So it sounds like they paid it out, $50 mil. I mean, that's a lot of money. Companies are not just giving away this much money. They're not even giving, this much money in class action lawsuits that cause cancer and rashes and all those other things that we read about. But they're having to give it up because they need that data back, or they need them to stop releasing it. JBS Foods. Although spring 2021 held hopeful news for the end of the pandemic, the increased trend of cyber attacks that began in 2020 showed no signs of slowing down. Another high-profile ransomware took place this May on JBS Foods, one of the biggest meat processing companies in the world. The same Russia-based, okay, so it's coming from Russia. Russia-based hacking group that attacked Acer, Revil, is thought to be behind the attack. Thought to be, not sure. It was confirmed that JSB paid the $11 million ransom demand for consulting with cybersecurity experts. After consulting with cybersecurity experts. The massive payment in Bitcoin is one of the largest ransomware payments of all time. Quanta. With the Acer attack, the rebel gang also demanded a $50 million ransom from computer manufacturer Quanta. The NBA. Man, they attacked the NBA. 500 gigabytes of confidential data. As of this point, no ransom payments have been made, at least none that were public. AXA. Attack on cyber insurance firm made headlines, and the hacker group gained access to a massive 3 terabytes of data. CNA, 1,500 devices were encrypted, including many employees' computers working remotely. The attack is supposedly linked to the hacker group Evil Corp. They sound like supervillains. And uses a new type of malware called Phoenix Crypto Locker. CD Projekt, video game developer based in Poland. Wonder why your favorite game is delayed? They probably got hacked. The hacker group accessed source code to game project and development and encrypted devices. However, CD Projekt has no plans to pay the ransom money and has backups in place to restore the lost data. Kia Motors, a subsidiary of Hyundai, was reportedly hacked with ransomware. Although Kia reported a widespread IT and system outage, they did not confirm the hack. Still, many experts believe the claims by Doppelpaymer gang demanded a $20 million ransom. The gang has released some stolen data, but updates on the hack have not surfaced in the news for the past few months. And now they're saying we need more people to help us control and cut down on everything that's happened. America has fallen in every direction. The lack of food, the lack of infrastructure, the hacks, it's tipping, it's wavering, it's slowly going down. This is our last one. 2 shot in Compton during street racing event. 2 men were shot in Compton overnight after what appears to be a street racing incident. It happened around 11:30 p.m. Saturday near Alondra Boulevard and Wilmington Boulevard. One victim was transported to the hospital in critical condition, while the other victim was also transported but is said to be in stable condition. Police say both victims are men in their 20s. The investigation is ongoing. So, I mean, man, there's so much that's always going on. You can go ahead and bring it back to me. There's so much that's going on in the world, from plagues to cyber attacks, the famine, the food. Even the food that is lawful and is available could be potentially poisoning us and our children. I mean, it's just everything is going on. But the reality is, you know, Christ said that these things would happen, that they would be the beginning of offenses. This would just be the beginning of the end. Let's get one last scripture. Isaiah chapter 33 and verse 6. It says, "And wisdom and knowledge shall be the stability of thy times, and strength of salvation. The fear of the Lord is his treasure." So our wisdom and knowledge, these commandments, the things that we know, the information that we gather unto ourselves, and our faith in the Most High, that's going to be the only thing that keeps us stable in these trying times. The only thing that keeps us on track with all the chaos and all the things that are unfolding right around us. So with that being said, Israel, I hope tonight was enlightening. Of course, always do your own research. Always be on the lookout for things that are relevant unto our nation, as well as things that are going to affect us within our captivity. With that, we say shalom.